Exclusive contract with Feilu Fiction Network Novel. Meiman. Silver Super, Mutant Academy begins on the eve of the third battle of X.Men. Chen Tian, who had traveled to the Mutant Academy and became a student, said he was a bit panicked. Because he knows how dangerous this world is. In addition to the constantly troublemaking Magneto, the nearby twist of the moon is about to erupt with the invasion of aliens and evil gods. The Sentinel plan to kill all the mutants in the dark has been completed. There is a dark universe lord next door ready to invade at any time. In addition, soon after, an extermination will come to make family planning for the universe. Although some superheroes, such as Hulk and Iron Man, will step forward to protect the world, countless ordinary people will still die in a single world war. So, let's wait until I transform into a Silver Super. Chen Tian, who integrated the Superman template, lay on the college terrace, basking comfortably in the sun. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. X.Men School. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What is the feeling of traveling? As a newcomer, Chen Tian will tell you that unless you have lived a miserable life in the original world, if you have a choice, it is better not to travel through it. Especially when traveling through a dangerous world. In this world, there are countless individuals with innate or unexpected abilities, mutants. In addition, there are even aliens, mythological gods, demons, etc., which are very chaotic and dangerous, and extraordinary battles occur at all times. Thinking of this, Chen Tian couldn't help but sigh softly, because he really didn't want to travel. As a prestigious university student, I joined a large enterprise as soon as I graduated, and within just 3 years, I entered the management team with an annual salary of over 500,000 yuan. For Chen Tian, who was born into an ordinary family, he only needs to work hard for a few more years or so to become a wealthy and free person. At that time, there will be everything from luxury cars to beautiful women. And most importantly, the previous world was very safe, although there were some local conflicts outside, the domestic situation was very peaceful. Unlike this world, there are many dangers. Ordinary people who are not paying attention will encounter superpowers fighting and be killed by the aftermath of the battle, without even a chance to cry out for justice. Fortunately, Chen Tian, who had traveled through time, was quite lucky. Not only did he possess superpowers, but he also had a golden finger, which prevented him from suffering like ordinary people. West, what's wrong with you? Upon hearing Chen Tian's low sigh, a girl with long linen hair sat next to him and looked over curiously. Upon hearing this, Chen Tian shook his head and said, "It's nothing, it's just that I feel a bit bored. Apart from attending classes and studying, I can't go out and wander around casually every day." The girl couldn't help but console herself, there's no way we mutants have been feared and rejected by ordinary people due to our abilities. At this point, the girl sighed and said, "Wester, you haven't been here long and you don't understand. If it weren't for the X school founded by a professor taking us in and providing us mutants with a shelter. Many people here may be subjected to inhumane experiments in a certain laboratory, or hide in a corner of a city, living a miserable life of hunger and no place to live." After speaking, the girl's eyes showed a hint of gratitude and respect. "Katie, you're right," Chen Tian nodded in agreement. The girl's name is Katie Prade, a white girl Chen Tian met at school at the age of 17. As a white girl, although Katie is only 17 years old, her figure has begun to develop and she appears curvy at a young age. In addition to her beautiful facial features, she has a high popularity in this mutant school called Xavier. Not bad, Xavier School. That is to say, in the X.Men, the school founded by Professor X has students who are all mutant teenagers. Katie, the girl who talks to Chen Tian, is a very famous phantom cat in X.Men 3, with the ability to penetrate and ignore material obstacles with people. And Chen Tian, named West Chen in this world, is 15 years old. born into an overseas Chinese family in Mexico, with a white mother. Therefore, due to his mixed race, although Chen Tian had black hair and pupils, his facial features were three-dimensional and handsome, with clear contours, appearing very handsome. Combined with his height of 1.75 meters and adult consciousness, he looks much more mature. It's more like being a college student than being 15 years old. Therefore, when sitting with Katie among a group of senior students, there was no sign of discord. Today is Saturday, and there is only one interactive class. The class is attended by the X.Men Deputy Captain, Aurora Monroe, who is known as the Stormwind Woman. At this moment, on the vast lawn, in addition to the senior students where Chen Tian was, there were also two groups composed of a group of junior high school students. At this moment, a strong wind struck from above, making everyone unable to open their eyes. For a moment, the trees around the lawn swayed, the weeds danced wildly, and a woman wearing a tight black combat suit with white hair descended from the sky. Behind her, her cloak fluttered, surrounded by a substantial gust of wind, shimmering with blue thunder, emitting a powerful aura. This appearance startled and widened the eyes of the elementary school students around me. "Good morning everyone," Aurora said with a smile as she waited for her feet to land before her thoughts moved. The strong wind and thunder surrounding her dissipated. Observing the adorable expressions on the faces of those children, Aurora was very satisfied with her appearance. "Hello teacher," said the elementary and middle school students politely. However, compared to these restrained elementary school students, middle school students and high school students appear more casual, and some even raise their hands curiously to ask. "Teacher, I heard that you went out this time to arrest a criminal mutant. Is that person very strong?" "Ross, aren't you talking nonsense? That mutant must be very strong, otherwise why do we need Teacher Aurora's intervention? I just don't know what the mutant's abilities are." A girl asked curiously, "Teacher, can you tell us about the situation of this task?" The purpose of interactive classes is to make these students not afraid, but to fear their own mutant identity and strange appearance. So when faced with the students' questions, Aurora smiled and nodded, "Sure, this mission is in Ingwa, and the target is a mutant named Troc. This person has the ability to be invisible and has committed multiple crimes, specifically infiltrating the homes of some beautiful young ladies." As Aurora detailed the details of this mission, Chen Tian sitting on the grass seemed to be listening attentively, but his actual consciousness had already been placed inside him. At this moment, under the sunlight, he felt warm all over his body, and a trace of energy from the sun was engulfed, transformed, and absorbed by countless cells. Chen Tian could keenly sense that after absorbing the energy of the sun, his body strengthened at a terrifying speed, and his internal strength continued to increase. The speed at which this power increases exceeds the imagination of ordinary people. Through your efforts to absorb sunlight, your whole body cells have evolved, and your physique has increased by 3. Your spirit +1, add 4 to your power. Upon hearing the constant sound of prompts in his mind, Chen Xian's mind moved and a transparent page that only he could see appeared in his eyes. Host: Chen Tian, West Chen, race. Human bloodline. Krypton Superman, Bronze Age, physical fitness. 205, 10 points for ordinary people, spirit. 105 strength. 230 grip strength, 3 tons agility. 221x gene ability. Energy rampage, level 1, storage space. One by one, glancing at the changes in his own attributes, Chen Tian couldn't help but exclaim in his heart, "Superman is truly a bug in the DC universe." On the day he traveled to this world, Chen Tian activated the system and drew a reward, the Krypton Superman template. Although this template is only a superhero from the Bronze Age and only fused for a week. But under the sunlight, within a few days, Chen Tian's physique skyrocketed to 20 times that of an ordinary person, with a grip strength of 3 tons. 3 tons, it doesn't sound very strong. But with 3 tons of force, Chen Tian could easily crush a person and overturn a van with one hand. In addition, Chen Tian's strong physique also allows him to perceive his facial features, such as vision, reflexes, and his body's flexibility and coordination, surpassing that of ordinary people by many times. Such strength has actually surpassed most of the mutants present. Although they are also mutants, most of the mutants at Xavier School have weak abilities and average abilities. Therefore, only a few can become X.men. The original intention of the establishment of the school was simply that Professor X wanted to shelter those excluded and hostile mutant youths, teach them knowledge, and provide care. Prevent them from falling into corruption and going astray. For example, West Chen, a former junior high school student, was injured due to an argument with a classmate at school, and his X gene was awakened due to emotional excitement, resulting in an energy explosion that injured that classmate. Because there were many people I saw at that time, it had a great impact on the school. Since that day, the students around him have been afraid, and ostracized. Even his family has become somewhat distant, which makes it difficult for the young man to adapt. In the end, I agreed to the sudden appearance of the laser eye and came to Xavier School with him. The day he arrived at school was also the day when Chen Tian traveled. However, Chen Tian is not very interested in the past of this body, he is more concerned about the present and future. After all, this is a world where strength is paramount. Thinking of this, Chen Tian was very grateful that he had drawn a Superman template that would increase his strength at an astonishing speed as long as he basked in the sun. Although he was a superhero from the Bronze Age and is still very weak, even his steel body and super heat ray ability have not yet awakened. But the future is promising. After all, the template he obtained comes from Superman, not other ordinary Kryptonians. In the DC universe, although Superman and Kryptonian both come from Krypton, they can actually be seen as 2 different beings. Because the former has unlimited potential to evolve into either the Silver Superman or the Golden Superman. Chapter 2. Chaotic World. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Due to years of bombardment with special effects movies, Chen Tian has gained some understanding of DC and Marvel universe, such as Superman. From the timeline, power level, and limits, Superman in the DC universe can be divided into Bronze Age, Silver Age, and Golden Age. This Bronze, Silver, and Gold do not refer to rank, but rather a state of Superman, and at the same time, Bronze, Silver, and Gold are not in a hierarchical relationship. But rather the strength of Superman from the 3 comic book eras. In the initial setting, the Silver Age Super was stronger than the Gold Age Super in some aspects. And the power of the Golden Super can explode the multiverse with one punch, freely create 5-dimensional humans, reverse time and space, and modify the rules of the universe, which is powerful and terrifying. Similarly, even during the weakest Bronze Age, the pinnacle of superhuman power reached millions of tons, moving at speeds exceeding hundreds of times the speed of sound. There is also an indestructible steel body that can withstand nuclear weapons, and super thermal rays that are even more powerful than laser eyes. In addition, there are various abilities such as X.eyes that can see through matter, global hearing without the need for media, breathing to form tornadoes, and so on, comparable to the gods of the human world. Of course, Superman also had obvious weaknesses. During the Bronze Age, Superman's magic defense was very low. Although it can quickly dodge, it is unable to defend against powerful curses that are directional, lockable, or even directly affecting the body. As for kryptonite, this thing can be ignored. Time passed as Chen Tian's thoughts dissipated. Alright, that's all for today's discussion. Now, let's move around freely. Storm Girl Aurora clapped her hands and announced the end of the interactive class. Goodbye, teacher. Hout, let's go play basketball, but we're not allowed to use our abilities. Lanster, I just learned how to make bread and butter yesterday. Do you want to try it? Maester. With Orolo's announcement of dissolution, the students immediately started to make a noise. They agreed to play with each other and make dim sum and dim sum together. Just as Chen Tian stood up and was about to find a place to continue sunbathing, he saw Storm Woman walking towards him. Looking at Chen Tian, who still had a childish expression on her face, Storm Girl smiled and said, "You must be West. I heard about you from Coster." Chen Tian was surprised and continued politely, "Hello, Teacher Aurora. Let's walk together." Aurora approached and invited Chen Tian. Chen Tian nodded and said, "Very honored." Walking on campus, Aurora spoke up first and said, "West, have you been used to spending these days at school?" Faced with the care of Storm Girl, Chen Tian said, "Thank you for your concern, teacher. I have been living very well at school these days, and everyone is very enthusiastic." "That's good." Aurora nodded and smiled, "This is our mutant home. Don't feel constrained here, otherwise it will be our teacher's negligence. By the way, West, I heard that you not only awakened your ability to burst energy, but also developed a body strengthening effect. Your punching power has reached 1 ton. "Yes, teacher." Chen Tian nodded without denying. Or rather, these were intentionally displayed by him. Although pretending to be a pig and eating a tiger is enjoyable, and the wood is beautiful in the forest, the wind will surely destroy it, Chen Tian does not fully agree with these words. Because pretending to be a pig for a long time can easily turn into a pig. And for someone who is mediocre, no one will pay attention to you, but you will not receive enough attention and will miss many opportunities. So it is necessary to appropriately demonstrate certain values and talents in order to gain more attention and voice. For example, now, if it weren't for Chen Tian's exceptional talent the day before yesterday, would Storm Girl have just returned to school and chatted with him? Think too much. So Chen Tian's face showed a hint of worry. "Teacher, I've noticed that my strength is still getting stronger. Will there be any bad mutations?" Noticing the worry on Chen Tian's face, Storm Girl comforted him gently, "West, don't be afraid of your own power. Increasing your power is actually a good thing. Our school principal is a global authority in the field of genetics and mutant changes. If you have any questions or have any unknown changes in your body, you can go to him. Normally, if you have any requirements, you can also tell the teachers, don't be afraid." "Thank you, teacher." The words of comfort from Storm Girl seemed to have had some effect, and the worry on Chen Tian's face slowly disappeared. At this moment, Chen Tian's voice changed and he said, "Teacher, can I apply to live alone? Recently, I feel like my strength is getting stronger and stronger. I'm afraid that if I don't control my strength well one day, it won't be good enough to hurt a few classmates who live with me," Chen Tian explained. Xavier School is a comprehensive school that integrates primary, middle, high, teaching, and accommodation. Except for teachers and a small number of students, most dormitories are inhabited by several peers. For example, Chen Tian lives in the same dormitory with 3 teenage middle school students, which makes him somewhat uncomfortable with adult consciousness. Plus some personal secrets, so I want to switch to a single room. Faced with Chen Tian's inquiry, Aurora pondered slightly, "Your concern is not without reason. If the power goes berserk, it may indeed be dangerous to others. I will ask the professor about this matter and then reply to you." Without a clear refusal, it was equivalent to almost agreeing, so Chen Tian showed a grateful smile on his face and said, "Thank you, teacher. No need, it's just a small matter." However, Wester, the professor's original intention for everyone to live together was to help you get to know each other better and not feel lonely. So even if you change dormitories and live alone, remember to communicate more with everyone. Well, thank you very much for the teacher's reminder. During the conversation between the two, on the grass not far away, some of the students who were playing suddenly disappeared and appeared a few meters away, while others ran and stepped on the water surface. In addition, there are also people whose lower body suddenly becomes like a snake, with a tail that quickly glides past. Some also have a red halo around them, causing their classmates to exclaim in surprise. In the eyes of ordinary people, this scene is completely chaotic, no wonder they are afraid, scared, and then rejected by those ordinary people. After instructing Chen Tian, Storm Girl was called away by a teacher who said she had something to do with her. Soon, Chen Tian received a notice to change dormitories, and 2 female caregivers appeared to help him pack his things and arrive at a single dormitory. When the caregiver left, Chen Tian looked at the small room in front of him with a bed, desk, bookshelf, and wardrobe, and a satisfied smile on his face. This is the treatment after showing some potential. If he were just the mutant with normal energy control ability registered at the time of enrollment, it would be impossible for him to live in a single dormitory. After organizing his things, Chen Tian came to the window. Watching the figures on the playground performing various abilities like magic, Chen Tian lost his composure and pondered his future path. Although X.Men do not have Marvel fire, they also have some understanding of mutants. For example, among the current mutants, the strongest are the pacifist leader Professor X, the rebel leader Magneto, followed by Laser, Storm Woman, and others. As for the Phoenix Power Chen, Grey had already died a few years ago. According to Chen Tian's observations over the past few days and the information collected, the current world time is 2006, which is within the old timeline of X.Men. At this time, the X.Men had already passed World War II for several years and were in the early stages of the outbreak of World War III. During this period, the existence of mutants has long been known globally and excluded by ordinary people. Many countries, forces, and individuals are secretly studying mutants. However, due to concerns about the Mutant Brotherhood led by Magneto, as well as some mutant resistance organizations, these studies are being conducted in secret. But Chen Tian knew that the secret research on Sentinels by the United States had entered its later stage. If nothing unexpected happens, the mutant extermination plan will be launched in 2013, 7 years from now. In just 1 year, most of the mutant people around the world will be killed by Sentinels. A few powerful mutants barely survived and hid until 2023, then relying on the power of the Phantom Cat Katie, they transmitted Wolverine consciousness back to 1973. Ultimately, it successfully prevented the assassination of the Metamorphosis woman that year, causing the United States to cancel the Sentinel plan and reverse the future. Thinking of this, Chen Tian pondered and said, "So, do I still have 7 years of development time?" Although he has fused the Krypton Superman template, he still possesses the X gene, so he is still a mutant. At least in the eyes of others. Therefore, in the past, Chen Tian's position was opposed to those in power in various countries. Chen Tian was very clear about this, so he had already placed the Sentinel, the robot of the extinct mutant, in his heart. In 7 years, Chen Tian was confident enough to reach the peak of the Bronze Age Superman, and by then, not to mention the Sentinels, even the Hulk would be just a punch. Not bad, Hulk. In terms of setting, X.Men and Marvel belong to the same universe, which means that this world has more than just powerful mutants like Phoenix Power and Magneto. There are also Iron Man, Hulk, Captain, Thor, and others present. Even including squatting in a corner of the universe, preparing for the extermination of family planning. At this thought, the slight relaxation that had just emerged in Chen Tian's heart disappeared, and he rubbed his forehead with a headache, saying, "Why is this world so chaotic? There are all kinds of people. If this is just an ordinary world, with his superhuman power, it's not about getting wind and rain, surpassing billions of people. When it comes to marrying hundreds of beautiful women, no one dares to have any objections. But unfortunately, this is a coexistence of gods and demons, with various extraterrestrial beings entering in disorder. Mutants, superheroes, and superpowers all have Marvel world. Forget it, it's no use thinking about this now. Let's wait until our strength is strong before we talk about it." Speaking, Chen Tian shook his head, turned around and went out to eat. Chapter 3. The Girl Targeted by Chen Tian. You are listening at novelfull.audio. There are not many students at Xavier School, and there are only over 30 students in high school, middle school, and elementary school combined. In addition, there are only a few dozen people in total, including ordinary mutant teachers hired by Professor X, X.Men, and school logistics staff. This is similar to what is shown in the movie. Therefore, at mealtime, you can see the figures of those X.Men in the cafeteria. For example, the famous Iceman Bobby and the Laser Eye Scott. In addition, there is also the mischievous Anna who runs through the trilogy of the War Police, which Chen Tian has seen several times. However, because movies are movies and the real world is the real world, there are some differences in appearance between these people and those in movies. For example, the mischievous Anna is quite beautiful, and with the white hair on her forehead, she looks a bit peculiar and charming. Thank you, a large fruit pizza, a whole meat burger, and a glass of cola. At the cafeteria window, when it was Chen Tian's turn, he politely asked the cafeteria lady inside. Students in mutant schools are free of charge in terms of food and accommodation, which makes one feel that Professor X has money. Carrying the food, Chen Tian glanced and his gaze fell on the corner of the cafeteria. There was a black-haired girl in her teens buried her head, quietly eating lunch alone. Although this is a mutant academy, everyone is a mutant who has been excluded from the outside world and should join the team for warmth. But wherever there are people, there are rivers and lakes, there are small circles, and this is no exception. For example, the girl with black hair, under Chen Tian's observation for a few days, is someone who has been rejected by her classmates around her. Of course, those classmates shouldn't bully her, after all, the professor and those teachers won't allow it. But they cannot talk to her, not play with her, not walk with her, and naturally she is isolated, appearing a bit out of place. As for the reason, Chen Tian is not very clear. He only knows that her name is Clarice, 13 years old, and she came to school 2 days earlier than him. Clarice. Chen Tian's eyes were lost in thought. If he remembers correctly, this girl also has a nickname called Flashing, and her ability is to open the space entrance to teleport people and items, which is somewhat similar to the ability of the Phantom Cat. However, the ability of the Phantom Cat is to penetrate matter, while she is teleportation. In the 2023 Reversal Future War, she has been entangled with the Sentinel robot for a long time. Of course, in the end, he was shot and killed by the Sentinel robot who found the loophole. What caught Chen Tian's interest was not her abilities, but his memory of Clarice growing up to be very beautiful, in line with his Asian aesthetic. Wester, there are seats here. Do you want them together? Just as Chen Tian walked towards the girl, not far away, Katie, who was sitting with 2 female friends, waved at him warmly. Chen Tian politely smiled and said, "Thank you, but I have found a spot, so I won't come and disturb you." Okay, Katie nodded without much thought. Carrying food, Chen Tian walked all the way to the girl and politely said, "Hello, can I sit here?" "Ah. Sure, that's okay." The girl looked up and felt a little nervous. At the same time, when she lifted her head, she revealed a palm-sized face, shaped like a melon seed, with delicate facial features and a gentle touch unique to Easterners. Her eyes turned light green due to mutation, and there were purple marks resembling birthmarks on the center of her eyebrows and eyebrow positions, giving off a strange beauty. In addition, some of her hair strands in front of her forehead appear purple, which should be caused by mutations. It's really beautiful. Chen Tian sighed in his heart. However, the girl at this time is still young, and I don't know if she will become disabled when she grows up. After all, some people were very cute and handsome when they were young, but they became disabled when they grew up. The representative figure of this is the protagonist of Harry Potter. Amidst his wild thoughts, Chen Tian, who was sitting down, took the initiative to say, "Hello, my name is Wes Chen." Looking at Chen Tian's self-introduction, due to her Asian characteristics, the girl instinctively felt a hint of familial affection, hesitated for a moment, and whispered. "Hello, my name is Clarice, Clarice Ferguson." It seems that the girl's personality is somewhat introverted and timid, which is very different from the handsome and brave beauty who experienced multiple life and death battles more than a decade later. However, Chen Tian is only planning to get to know each other briefly this time. So after introducing myself, I smiled and nodded at her, picked up the pizza and started eating it. Looking at the black-haired boy eating with relish across from her, the girl didn't speak and silently ate lunch with her head down. When she was about to eat, when she looked up, she found that the black-haired boy across from her had already finished his meal. He placed his elbow on the table and looked at her with his chin. Suddenly, the girl felt a little nervous again. She instinctively wiped her mouth, but found nothing, and couldn't help but wonder softly. What's going on? Chen Tian smiled slightly and said, "It's nothing, I just suddenly realized that you're so beautiful, perfect like a little princess." Suddenly, Clarissa's face turned red and she felt a little nervous. She lowered her head in embarrassment and whispered in a mosquito-like voice, "Really, really? Really?" Chen Tian nodded confidently. Unlike the reserved and introverted East, the Western culture is open and direct. Say whatever you want and never hide your emotions. For example, on the street, if you see a beautiful woman, you can go over and praise her, and then ask for her phone number. As long as the other party doesn't dislike you and is lucky, maybe they can spend a wonderful night and then go their separate ways the next day. Of course, the prerequisite is not to be discovered by the other party's boyfriend or husband. This may sound like freedom and openness, but it's actually quite chaotic, so most Western women have had many men in their lifetime, and she doesn't know the exact number. Similarly, men are also similar, without the sense of responsibility that Easterners feel when they are together. But Chen Tian just gave her a brief compliment and then said hello and stood up. He is going to the library this afternoon to look up some information. Although he has a rough idea of the current time, the world he is in, and some basic information. But as a real world, this is not a movie or a comic, so Chen Tian needs to search for more information and information. For example, which countries are hostile to mutants, where mutants are active, where superheroes appear, and the current level of technology. In addition, he also wants to find some books about genetic evolution to read. After all, he has an X gene ability. Only by understanding mutants can we better understand ourselves. P.S. The new book has just been released. Friends who like it, remember to collect it, send flowers, and vote to support it. Chapter 4. The Mysteries of Life. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Mutation is the beginning of evolution. It has enabled us to evolve from single cells to become the masters of Earth's creatures. And this process is very long, taking tens of thousands, even tens of thousands of years. In the evolution of life, there is a mutation cycle every hundreds of thousands of years, making the species stronger and more advanced. The afternoon masculinity passed through the glass and scattered in the library, creating a drowsy and lazy feeling. Chen Tian sat by the window, immersed in the sunlight, with all his cells absorbing the energy of the sunlight, constantly evolving and becoming stronger. This is the abnormality of Superman. At this moment, in Chen Tian's hand, holding a book on the theory of mutant genes, he was reading it with great interest. I don't know if it's due to evolution, but his thinking and comprehension abilities have improved to a certain extent, and he can barely read this kind of obscure book. By the time Chen Tian finished reading a thick book on the fundamentals of genes, he had already gained some basic understanding of the X gene and the evolving krypton cells in his body. Putting down the book, Chen Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, as if he was lost in thought. He felt that like Superman, the power of mutants comes from genes. However, unlike Superman, which undergoes unlimited evolution and strengthening of genetic cells in the body under sunlight exposure, the X gene in the mutant human body has a clear upper limit. For example, among the mutants, the strongest Magneto, Professor X, Storm Woman, Iceman, etc., are only set as star-rated creatures in the manga. And the performance in the movie is not to mention, it cannot even affect a large-scale war. So the setting of comics cannot be taken seriously, they are definitely not that strong. Otherwise, the mutants around the world would not live in dire straits, but rather humans would be enslaved by mutants. As for Phoenix, although defined as the strongest Omega level, fundamentally she is not considered a mutant. Because her ability comes from the power of the Phoenix, not the power of the mutant, her mutant ability is psychic. And every time Phoenix appeared, she boasted so fiercely, but she couldn't control herself at all. Apart from causing damage and negative effects, there was nothing left or right. So it's not your own power, an uncontrollable force, no matter how strong it is, it's useless, from Chen Tian's quote. Thinking of this, Chen Tian felt a bit regretful. Because although he can feel that all cells in his body undergo changes and become stronger under sunlight exposure. But this perception is just a vague sense of direction. At this point, he is still unable to perceive the changes in a cell in depth and clearly. Not to mention the chromosomes within cells, the DNA and gene sequences within chromosomes. If one day he could clearly perceive the cells throughout his body and the genetic changes deep within them, then perhaps he could unravel the mysteries of life. After all, as long as the sun shines, it can evolve infinitely, and even superhumans stronger than gods are too abnormal. With thoughts emanating from his mind, Chen Tian looked up across the table. There, wearing a black dress and a girl with long black hair wearing earplugs, sat quietly across from her, looking down at a fairy tale book. Clarice came very early. Chen Tian noticed her as she sat down, but at that time he was sinking into the book, so he just nodded and said hello. It seems that this girl is very lonely at the mutant school, otherwise it wouldn't have been just a simple meeting at noon. In the afternoon, she took the initiative to sit opposite him. However, he vaguely remembered that in the manga, the flickering adoptive father was a saber-toothed tiger under Magneto. Although she will fight alongside the X-Men in the future, from the current point in time, she should still be studying at a primary school controlled by Magneto. Sure enough, the real world is completely different from movies and comics. Thinking of this, Chen Tian rubbed his eyebrows with a headache, because it represented a lot of future information that he knew, which may differ from reality. At this moment, he noticed the movement of rubbing his eyebrows. The girl across from him raised her head and whispered, "West, are you feeling unwell?" That cautious appearance seemed to be afraid of being rejected and cared for by Chen Tian, inexplicably causing some heartache. No, it's just a headache." Chen Tian, who didn't expect her to care, gave a scolding and then a faint smile appeared on his face. At this moment, Chen Tian's voice changed and he curiously said, "By the way, Clarice, I haven't introduced myself yet. I come from Brijo in Mexico, and you?" Clarice paused slightly and whispered, "I come from Arizona, USA. Arizona seems to be right next to Mexico, shouldn't it be a bit chaotic?" Chen Tian thought for a moment and found the location of this continent on the map in his mind. The girl pursed her lips and nodded, saying, "Yes, it's very chaotic there. The locals are not very friendly to people of different races and the poor." From the calm tone of the young girl, Chen Tian felt that she didn't like that place at all. "Clarice, how did you get here?" Chen Tian's question seemed to touch the girl's heart, with a hint of sadness on her face. Just as Chen Tian felt that his question was a bit abrupt and wanted to comfort her, she didn't want to say anything, so there was no need to say it. The girl spoke softly with some sadness. "That day, many bad people came to our house, they killed their foster father, and then." In Clarice's account, she used to live frugally with her foster father in the suburbs of the city, but suddenly half a month ago, a group of people rushed into her house. In the fierce battle, her adoptive father was killed, and she also awakened the power of the mutant due to the intense reaction, suddenly teleporting to escape. Afterwards, she hid in the city for 2 days, but when she was too hungry to bear it, she was found by X-Men and taken to Xavier School. After listening to her narration, Chen Tian quickly comforted her while dispelling a hint of speculation in his heart. "It seems that I overthought it and wanted to be an undercover agent under Professor X's nose, it's simply impossible. P.S. Brothers, this book is guaranteed to start at 7 o'clock every day. If you like it, remember to cast flowers and vote to support it. Chapter 5. If I don't work hard in junior high school, boss will tear when watching Brother Empty. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The greenery of Xavier School is done very well, like a park surrounded by gardens, with trees and lawns everywhere, making it very quiet. The next day is Sunday, which is also a day off. On the lawn below the dormitory, Chen Tian leaned against a chair, propped up Erlang's feet, folded his hands behind his head, and basked comfortably in the sun. Under the sunlight, Chen Tian felt warm all over his body, and his mind kept ringing with reminders of physical fitness +3 and strength +5. Just one day later, Chen Tian's strength skyrocketed again, reaching over 300 points in physique and approaching 5 tons in strength. The speed of improvement is somewhat astonishing. It seems that the stronger the strength, the faster the improvement speed. In addition, the increase in physical fitness also made other changes in Chen Tian's body more apparent. For example, in terms of vision, he can clearly see a mosquito dancing among the grass leaves under the roots of a tree more than 10 meters away, with its wings vibrating and taking up remnants. Obviously, this is a sign of dynamic vision. In addition to physical fitness, the growth of spiritual attributes has also made Chen Tian's spirit very strong, and his thinking is running faster and faster. It's strange that there is no ability to awaken spirits. Under normal circumstances, the spiritual attributes of an ordinary person are more than 10 times that of an ordinary person. Not to mention awakening any spiritual perception, it is also necessary to awaken the superpower of individual mental motivation, right? But currently, Chen Tian has no other characteristics except for his faster thinking and ability to vaguely perceive changes in his body. Just as Chen Tian felt the changes in his body and familiarized himself with the growing power inside, Clarissa's figure appeared at the corner of a small path in the distance. Today's girl is wearing a white T-shirt and slim-fitting jeans, making her look slim and clear as she is only 1.5 meters tall and somewhat thin. Paired with her delicate and beautiful face, her eerie eyes, and purple lines, she walked in the sunlight with a hint of allure emanating from her body. Approaching Chen Tian, the black-haired girl cautiously called out, "West." Chen Tian withdrew his gaze and smiled, "Good morning, Clarisse." And just as he looked up, because he had not converged his vision, Chen Tian's lowered gaze was from bottom to top, with white flat shoes, straight legs, and it seems to be white a hem. Chen Tian quickly narrowed his vision and looked up at the girl with an unchanged expression on her face, as if nothing had happened. The girl who didn't know these things pointed to Chen Tian's side and whispered, "West, can I sit here?" "Of course, please feel free to sit down." "Thank you." After the girl sat down, she saw Chen Tian close her eyes, seemingly enjoying the sunshine. She didn't disturb him, but took out her headphones and put them on, quietly reading a book. The cover of the book reads, Hans Christian Andersen's collection of fairy tales, as if she enjoys reading fairy tales. On the chair by the lawn, there were girls sitting with bent legs, listening to music and reading books, and boys lazily leaning against the chair, looking relaxed and basking in the sun. From a distance, the picture appears very warm. However, this warm scene was quickly shattered. Not long after Clarisse sat down, 4 boys walked over not far away. The leading boy has short brown hair and a rebellious expression, which is not easy to provoke at first glance. And the goal is clear, clearly coming towards Chen Tian and the others. And when she saw those boys, Clarissa's face immediately showed a look of disgust, fear, and apprehension. Among the 4, the leading boy shouted loudly from a distance, "Hi! Clarisse, we just went to the dormitory and wanted to play with you, but unfortunately you're not here." "So it's here," Bernard said as he looked at Chen Tian. "Bernard, what are you asking me for?" The girls seemed to be a bit afraid of them and instinctively shrank away from Chen Tian. Although all 4 mutants had smiles on their faces, Chen Tian, who had strong spiritual power, felt a faint hostility from them and couldn't help but open his eyes. At the same time, simple information about the four people came to his mind. Bernard, a junior high school student at the age of 15, is a mutant with short-range teleportation abilities and a strong and domineering personality, making him the center of a small circle in the class. Johnny, also in junior high school, is 14 years old. The mutant has a bear-like ability, with strength like an explosive bear. When it erupts, thick hair grows all over his body. Claude Bernard did not answer Clarissa's words, but looked at Chen Tian, who was leaning back on the chair, with a cold expression and a hint of provocation in his eyes. "West, I know you. Is that right, then?" Chen Tian nodded casually. As an adult, Chen Tian doesn't really want to pay attention to these junior high school students. But it's obvious that these guys are not friendly, so their tone is not very polite. Chen Tian's attitude made Bernard and the four of them feel a bit uncomfortable. Johnny, who looked like a bear, whispered in a jar, "West, don't you know that Clarisse is Bernard's girlfriend?" The girl next to Chen Tian suddenly spoke up, "No, I didn't agree that day." Looking at the girl with a somewhat fierce reaction, Bernard looked sincere and said, "Clarisse, I really like you. Promise to be my girlfriend." The girl shook her head and said firmly, "But I don't like you." Watching this scene, Chen Tian'in vaguely guessed the reason why Clarisse was excluded. At the same time, they also knew the source of hostility in Bernard and his team. Just a special junior high school kid who insists on dating a 13-year-old girl. Is the West so open? Or rather, he is outdated. When should we start dating from a young age? Does not work hard in middle school make the boss sad? However, it has to be said that this kid's eyes are a bit poisonous. Surprisingly noticed the potential stock of Clarisse. Knowing that when she grows up, she will become a stunning beauty dressed in hot and sexy clothes. P.S. Hee, the fifth watch, asking for tickets and flowers. Chapter 6. Shocked Chen Tian. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bernard felt a bit embarrassed when he was rejected again in front of so many people. But he didn't agree to be his girlfriend, so he couldn't beat her up, so his eyes were a bit unfriendly and he looked at Chen Tian, who was a bit more handsome than him. In his mind, as a mutant who was excluded from the outside world, timid Clarisse should be afraid of loneliness, so she secretly greeted her classmates. The meaning is that he really likes Clarisse and is currently striving to pursue her. Everyone give him face and don't disturb him. And those mutant students in the class were obviously a bit wary of Bernard's small circle of four, so no one really paid attention to her these days. Originally, after more than a week, Bernard felt that it was almost over and was ready to find an opportunity to make Clarisse appear willing to be his girlfriend. But who knew, a new student emerged halfway through. Yesterday, they took the initiative to talk to Clarisse, and then both sides hooked up like this. I heard that the two of them stayed in the library all afternoon yesterday. This morning, someone saw them sitting together by the lawn on a date. Can Bernard tolerate this? This is the girl he first fell in love with. With this in mind, Bernard looked at Chen Tian with unfriendly eyes and said, "Wester, I really like Clarisse. I hope you can give her to me." Suddenly, Chen Tian was somewhat surprised. What kind of confidence and self-righteous person is this to say such things? Do you think the whole world revolves around you? I really like it, I hope you can give her to me. Do you say that if you like me, I must give it to you? Your face is very big. Or did you say you ate the fruit of noodles? Also, when did I say I liked her? It's simply inexplicable. What I like is the beautiful woman in 10 years, not the little girl who looks like a match now. I'm not a pervert. And don't you think it's disrespectful to treat a girl like an object in front of her, regardless of her opinions and attitudes, to determine her belonging? At this moment, a series of roast appeared in Chen Tianxin's heart. He didn't know whether to say that this junior high school student was arrogant or naive. Is this the Western way of thinking? I think so, don't you think so? However, although Chen Tian was shocked in his heart, his face did not show any signs, and his tone was a bit cold. Bernard, it seems that you have made a few mistakes. Firstly, Clarice is not an object. It is her right to be friends with whom she likes, and you have no right to make decisions for her. Secondly, we are just classmates. What qualifications do you have to command me? Who do you think you are? And you should be grateful that Clarice and I are just friends. If I were really dating her, with your current attitude, even if I beat you up, the teacher and they wouldn't say anything. As he spoke, Chen Tian stood up and stood in front of the girl. With a height of 1.75 meters and a straight figure, the girl was completely covered, giving a sense of security. Chen Tian's words stunned the girl, who was somewhat afraid, and a faint emotion surged in her heart. It was a feeling of being respected. This feeling is difficult for a girl who has been living with her adoptive father in a poor area since childhood and is often looked down upon and despised by those around her. Growing up in this environment has also developed her sensitive personality of being timid, insecure, and not daring to cause trouble. Bernard and the others saw this, so they dared to bully her. After being subjected to cold violence, they dared not go to see the teacher. Looking at Chen Tian, who stood half a head taller than him, under his gaze, Bernard inexplicably felt his momentum weaken and instinctively took a half step back. But immediately, Bernard felt angry about his half step back. He is a prominent figure in the junior high school department, who has awakened the dual abilities of short-range teleportation and physical enhancement, and has been praised as a genius by X.Men's Laser Eye and Iceman. Even Professor X has praised him. When will it be a new student's turn to teach him a lesson? And it's still in front of the 3 attendants. If we don't retrieve the venue today, how will we continue to work in class in the future? Suddenly, Bernard's face showed a fierce expression and he said, West, don't forget, this is different from the outside. This is the mutant school. For us mutants, whoever has a big fist makes sense. I heard that your mutant ability is energy burst, which also comes with some physical strengthening. I don't know if you dare to compete with me. Chen Tian raised his eyebrows and showed a faint smile on his face, saying, Why, does Bernard want to fight me? Then Chen Tian became a little careless and said, Don't say I bullied you, come on, is it the 4 of you who picked on me alone, or am I the one who assaulted the 4 of you? As he spoke, the blood inside Chen Tianqing began to boil, and a powerful force surged out of his muscles, ready to take action at any time. If Bernard and his companions were just ordinary middle school students, Chen Tian would not have seen them in the same way. But the opponent is a mutant with powerful extraordinary abilities, which happens to be a good experimental target in Chen Tianyan's eyes. You can try his current strength. He has been constantly sunbathing these days, and his strength has been increasing. The feeling of being covered in strength made Chen Tian feel like he was holding a hammer and wanted to find a few nails to hammer twice. Suddenly, the smell of gunpowder became strong on both sides, and Clarice, who was scared, quickly stopped between them. Her face turned pale and she said, No, you can't fight. In her opinion, Bernard and the others had 4 people who had been enrolled for a long time, and the mutants were skilled in their abilities. But Chen Tian is not only a new student, but also only one person, and once he takes action, he will definitely suffer losses. Together, are you looking down on me, Bernard? Bernard sneered and said, Clarice, get out of the way. This is a duel between men, but don't worry, it's just me and him fighting alone. Although Clarice was afraid, she still mustered up the courage and shook her head, saying, I won't let you, Bernard. I've already rejected you twice. If you don't leave, I'll go tell the teacher that you're bullying me. Obviously, Clarice didn't believe Bernard's words at all. You. Bernard's chest heaved, a bit irritable and unwilling. Finally, Bernard gave Chen Tian a fierce look and said, Very well, West. I'll let you go today and don't give me a chance to teach you a lesson. Obviously, the school teachers still had a strong deterrent effect on these junior high school students. After leaving a harsh sentence, Bernard and the four of them angrily left. Unfortunately, Chen Tian couldn't help but shake his head as he watched the four Bernards leave with harsh words. A child is just a child, surprisingly scared by a shout to the teacher. At the same time, on the 5th floor of the teaching building not far away, Oralo, the storm girl, and Scott, the laser, stood behind the French window and saw the scene just now. And because the mutant has a strong physique, I also heard their conversation. Aurora frowned slightly and said, Bernard's abilities haven't improved much in the past 2 years, but his personality has been more deeply influenced by the power of mutants. Scott remained slightly silent and did not speak. After saying this, Aurora turned to Scott and said, also, he secretly collaborated with his classmates to isolate Clarice. You don't care about this. Scott's voice was a bit low as he said, I only found out about this. I had planned to warn Bernard in class tomorrow. But currently, it doesn't seem necessary. Watching Scott's low-willed expression, Stormwind opened her mouth. Finally, as if thinking of something, he let out a sigh in his heart and didn't say anything more about it. Instead, he changed the topic and said, by the way, what do you think of West's performance just now? Scott pondered slightly, it's great to have the courage to stand up and protect your companions, not lacking the will to fight. Aurora smiled and said, I think so too. P.S. 6th Watch, brothers, remember to vote for Flowers to support it. Chapter 7. Genes Becoming Gods. You are listening at novelfull.audio. For this conflict, Chen Tian didn't take it to heart. In his eyes, it was just a small matter of a few children vying for jealousy. However, after this incident, Clarice seems to have become closer to him. For example, when Chen Tian sat down again, the girl took off a pair of headphones and carefully handed them to him, saying, West, do you want to listen together? Facing the expectant emerald green eyes, Chen Tian paused slightly and then smiled and took the earphones. When Chen Tian put his earphones into his ear, an unheard of light music suddenly came, with a soothing and ethereal rhythm, giving the illusion of standing in front of a valley after rain. The girl's beautiful eyes flickered and she said, West, does it sound good? Chen Tian nodded in appreciation and said, not bad, Clarice. What's the name of this piece of music? This piece of music is called The Girl from Afar, created by the famous pianist Stinkley from Ingwa. No one bothered next, Chen Tian lazily sunbathed until noon, and then went to the cafeteria with Clarice for lunch. After having lunch and taking a break, Chen Tian went to the library again. Clarice seemed to have something to attend to this afternoon and didn't come with her. In the library, Chen Tian followed the directory guide and picked up several books on genetics and biology from the bookshelf, finding a place to sit in the sun. He found the biology and genetics of this world very interesting, and if some of these theories could be realized, perhaps people could become gods in one step. No, it should be said that there have already been some successful cases. For example, mutants. The current strongest Professor X and Magneto could have been called gods with their power if they had appeared in ancient times. In addition, the powerful green giant and the magical 4 heroes with special abilities were also worshipped as gods in ancient times. It's just that mutants are unknown how many tens of thousands of years ago they were experimental subjects of the celestial group, while the Hulk and the magical 4 are unexpected products of modern science. So Chen Tian was thinking, if he could control the evolutionary direction of krypton cells and make the absorption and conversion of sunlight energy faster, could he accelerate the improvement of his strength. Also, Superman from the Bronze Age had a weakness in low magic defense. Although this low magic defense refers to powerful magic that ordinary magic cannot break through, it is indeed a weakness. So if we can activate or fuse some X gene abilities, such as absolute barrier, mind blocking, energy absorption, etc., we can make up for our weaknesses. However, genetics is somewhat profound and involves a wide range, making it not so easy to achieve short-term gains. After reading for 3 hours, Chen Tian put down his book with a headache and rubbed his forehead. In the past, he was just a science graduate majoring in computer software, and it was not easy for him to enter the field of biology at this time. "I didn't expect you to be interested in biology, West." In a gentle voice, an old man sitting in a wheelchair came across from Chen Tian, with a smile on his face, deep eyes, and eyes full of wisdom. "Professor," Chen Tian looked at the old man with some surprise. Chen Tian is no stranger to this extremely intelligent character who runs through the front and back of the X.Men. On the day of enrollment, he had already met Professor X. In addition, he also faintly felt a terrifying spiritual power from Professor X, majestic like an ocean, which made Chen Tian's heart tremble. Then my mind emptied and I didn't think of anything. This person's ability is telepathy and willpower control. It can be easily manipulated, deleted, browsed, and created to remember and control others. At this moment, Professor X smiled slightly and said with a gentle gaze, "West, you don't have to be wary of me. Although my abilities are special, in general, I won't use them casually with others. After all, everyone has their own privacy, unless the other person is our enemy." Chen Tian felt a bit embarrassed and said, "Professor, you misunderstood. I have great respect for you, how could you be on guard?" Although this is a fact, he does have some fear of Professor X's ability, but Chen Tian will not foolishly admit it. And although Professor X has strong telepathy, Chen Tian feels that if he really wants to browse his memories, he will definitely be stopped. After all, there is a systematic existence in him. Professor X didn't dwell too much on this topic and said gently, "As the principal of the school, my responsibility is to help students clarify and teach knowledge. Unfortunately, most of the students in school are focused on studying their mutant abilities, and not many are actually serious about reading. Like Wester, there are fewer people who spend their rest time quietly reading. It seems that you are interested in biology and genetics. Coincidentally, my research direction is also gene mutation. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me anytime. Of course, even if it's not a learning issue, you can come to me." Although he is wary of Professor X's abilities, his achievements in the field of biology are indeed remarkable, and Chen Tian does want to delve into the fields of biology and genetics. So after a slight pause, he began to ask for his advice. These questions from Chen Tian are all doubts that arose while reading these past few days, which belong to the foundation of genetics. However, the professor still patiently answers them. Through questioning and answering, Chen Tian gained a clearer understanding of genetics. After Chen Tian finished asking the question that came to mind temporarily, Professor X smiled at him and said gently, "West, I still see some confusion in your eyes. Do you have any other questions? Professor, do you know about Bernard and Clarice?" Chen Tian asked about what happened this morning. As the principal of the mutant school and a powerful psychic, it can be said that the entire school is under his gaze. Chen Tian doesn't think anything can satisfy him. P.S. 7th Watch, and also, brothers, don't forget to vote for Flowers to support it. Chapter 8. Manipulating People's Hearts. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I know. Faced with Chen Tian's inquiry, Professor X nodded calmly. His composure stunned Chen Tian, and before he could speak, the professor continued, "You're wondering, why didn't I stop you?" Chen Tian nodded. The professor turned his head to look out the window and said in a gentle voice, "Do you know West? The difference between mutants and ordinary people is not only in their bodies, but also in their minds. I don't know if it's due to the X gene, but I've found that most mutants also experience some psychological problems after awakening to mutations. Some people become extremely arrogant, full of destructive desires, driven by the desire for power. Some people become even more timid, afraid of the outside world, afraid of their own abilities, dislike their mutant identity, and even self-harm. For example, Clarissa's personality became too timid. And there's Bernard, who is also influenced by power. His spiritual flaws are magnified, his personality becomes increasingly arrogant and irritable, but he doesn't know it himself. As the principal of the mutant school, my responsibility is to guide students, familiarize themselves with their abilities, and overcome psychological deficiencies. Become a user of power, rather than being driven by it. This time, I originally wanted to borrow Bernard's hand to provoke Clarissa's resistance and teach her to resist. She couldn't just endure things and step back. For mutants, enduring and yielding is unable to solve the problem. Struggle. Professor, isn't your philosophy advocating that mutants should coexist peacefully with ordinary people? Chen Tian was somewhat puzzled. Professor X smiled slightly and said, "Not bad, my philosophy is indeed advocating peaceful coexistence, so I established the X.Men to arrest those mutants who harm society. But there is a prerequisite for peaceful coexistence, which is that those ordinary people do not include those who are hostile to mutants." Professor X's words greatly shocked Chen Tian. In the past, his understanding of Professor X came from movies and comics. "I just feel like he's a powerful mutant with some kind of Virgin Mary." But to his surprise, he had always had some misunderstandings about this person's philosophy. No wonder, even if he had defeated Magneto in the past, he did not kill him and rarely killed other disruptive mutants, because he needed a knife. A knife that forces humanity to coexist peacefully with the majority of mutants who hope for peace. But sometimes, people's hearts are uncontrollable, and professors are not gods. Otherwise, there will be no future deaths of oneself and the emergence of sentinels who will exterminate mutants later on. Thinking of this, Chen Tian sighed slightly in his heart. At this point, Professor X continued, "From the current results, I have achieved half of my goal this time. Because of you, Clarisse has gained some courage to resist. However, it's a pity that Bernard was deeply influenced by power, his personality became increasingly irritable, his desires were strong, and he was full of aggression. In fact, he has great potential and has a strong ability to teleport freely. If used well, his effect is no less than that of a night walker, which is very helpful to his teammates. I hope you won't be hostile towards him in the future, Wester. He won't become your enemy. Next, I will take action to guide him to learn how to get along peacefully with his classmates." "Professor, how are you going to guide him?" Chen Tian was a little curious. Professor X didn't answer, just smiled slightly. The next day, when Chen Tian went to the classroom, he ran into Bernard and his friends in the hallway outside. After seeing Chen Tian, Bernard took the initiative to greet her and warmly said, "West, good morning. Did you have a great time playing with Clarisse yesterday?" As he spoke, Bernard even frowned and looked at him, devoid of the gunpowder smell of yesterday, and there was no hostility or aggression in his eyes. Including the three of Johnny behind him, it seems that they have also forgotten about yesterday's conflict. Everyone looks like good classmates and good companions. Facing the enthusiastic four people, Chen Tian remained calm and nodded in greeting. But as he followed them into the classroom, Chen Tian felt a chill in his heart. It is obvious that this is Professor X's oral guidance, which unknowingly modified the memories of the four individuals and affected their personalities. But I didn't notice it at all. Undoubtedly an Omega-level telepathic, the power is truly terrifying. Chen Tian was even more wary of Professor X's methods, and at the same time understood why the other party suddenly appeared yesterday, obviously with the aim of appeasing him. Professor X is also aware of how terrifying his own abilities are, so he rarely uses them. In order to prevent Chen Tian from feeling scared by Bernard's sudden change, he specially appeared yesterday to tell him the cause and effect, so that he could be mentally prepared. At the same time, it also indirectly illustrates Professor X's emphasis on Chen Tian, or in other words, on potential mutants. Sure enough, the treatment of geniuses and ordinary people is completely different. But Professor, although your starting point is good intentions, it's hard for people to predict. Thinking of this, Chen Tian sighed slightly in his heart. When those people in the future know that you have modified their memories, they will not receive gratitude, but hatred and suspicion. Because no one likes to be manipulated. For example, Jean Grey, who is about to turn black and return. The almost disbanded Xavier College in the future is also related to Professor X's abilities. System, has my memory been watched, affected, or modified by anyone? Chen Tian's voice echoed in his mind, but he still felt a bit uneasy. Faced with Chen Tian's inquiry, a cold neutral voice rang out in his mind. Please rest assured that under the protection of the system's core rules, no one can invade the host's mind. That's good. With a complex mood, Chen Tian walked into the classroom. This morning's class was about biology that he was interested in, and the teacher was an ordinary mutant named Honest. P.S. 8th update, brothers. Remember to vote and support with flowers. Chapter 9, I was moved. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Due to the small number of students and the identity of mutants, students at Xavier School are divided into primary, middle, and high school departments. Students of similar ages all attend classes in a large classroom, and the content taught by the teacher is not highly professional, making it easy for students to understand. As for homework, exams are almost non-existent. After all, the professor's purpose in managing this school is also to provide a place for persecuted mutant children to learn knowledge. As for whether one can become a scholar and contribute to the social sciences, it has never been considered. Of course, if you personally want to learn, you can specifically consult those teachers or go to the library to find books to read, and no one will stop you. In this atmosphere, the students at Xavier School have low academic pressure and live happily every day. Today, as usual, when Chen Tian arrived by the window and sat down in a position where he could bask in the sun. However, at this moment, Chen Tian smelled a faint fragrance, and a young girl walked past him and sat in the seat in front of him, which was Clarice. Chen Tian was a bit surprised. He remembered the girl sitting in the back row all along. It seemed that he sensed his gaze, and the girl in the front row turned around, her beautiful emerald green eyes blinking with a hint of nervousness. Chen Tian smiled at her, and the heart of the girl who was already close to him suddenly jumped. There's no way, Chen Tian was already very handsome. In addition, during this period of absorbing solar energy and constantly evolving, the whole person seems to have some sunny qualities, appearing clean and sunny. For these middle and high school girls, such boys are completely killers. Looking at the emaciated figure in front of him, Chen Tian felt that it was also good, at least the class wouldn't seem so boring. As an adult, Chen Tian didn't really want to come to this high school course, but in order not to appear abnormal, he had to come again. In the next 2 classes, Chen Tian lazily lay on the table in a daze. When I was extremely bored, I looked up at the girl's hair in front of me. It was very thick. At the same time, he noticed that Clarice listened attentively and had been looking at the teacher on the podium. Unexpectedly, she is a good child who enjoys learning. It's so boring. Chen Tian yawned. Bored, Chen Tian's gaze fell on Clarice's hair. By the way, should I pull her hair and let her feel the joy of her student years? Never mind, I feel like this behavior is so childish. After some thought, Chen Tian dispelled the idea. He felt that if he had followed the behavior of reaching out to pull Clarice's hair in those videos, he might not have turned around and stared coquettishly. But rather the weak and tearful gaze of the girl after being bullied. Time passed, and finally noon arrived in Chen Tian's anticipation. Suddenly, the classroom became noisy, and those middle school students also held their breath for the whole morning. Just as a college student got up and prepared to go to the cafeteria for dinner, Chen Tian also stood up and invited the beautiful girl in front of him. Clarice, do you want to go together? The black-haired girl let out a low hum and followed Chen Tian like a obedient daughter. Law. This appearance left Chen Tian somewhat confused. What was the attitude behind? It's rare for my charm to be so great that she fell in love with me after just a few encounters. Bullshit. Anyway, Chen Tian doesn't believe it. It seems that Clarice is too introverted and has no friends. Therefore, he developed a sense of closeness towards his peers who had been in contact with him and felt good about him. At this moment, they walked out of the teaching building. The students in front had already run away, and there was no one around. Feeling a bit embarrassed, Chen Tian spoke up and asked for a topic. By the way, Clarice, I noticed that you listened very attentively during your math and physics classes earlier. Do you like math and physics? I'm not. Chen Tian's words made the girl a bit nervous and she opened her mouth. Finally, the girl lowered her head and said with some inferiority, actually, I don't understand the teacher's class at all. I only read for 2 years when I was a child, but I didn't read it because I moved. I just pretended to be very serious because I was afraid other students would know in the classroom. In fact, I couldn't understand any of those mathematical formulas. After speaking, the girl stopped in her tracks and lowered her head in inferiority. It seems that this kind of self is not qualified to walk with Chen Tian. Chen Tian, who had taken 2 steps, stopped and looked at her strangely. Clarice, why aren't you leaving? The girl looked up and opened her mouth. West, you. I'm so stupid, shouldn't you look down on me? Why look down on you? Chen Tian looked at her strangely and said, I talk to you and communicate with you because of Clarice, not because of your knowledge. And we are mutants. For us, learning knowledge is just to broaden our horizons and not be insignificant or ignorant. So why do I look down on you because of your poor academic performance? What a fool. In a sigh, Chen Tian reached out and touched her brain, comforting her, all right, you girl is just too sensitive. What do you want to do all day long? Be a good person, just be happy. Who knows if you'll suddenly have a hiccup tomorrow? Chen Tian's words moved the black-haired girl a bit. She has been very worried and has been hiding things she cares about. In the eyes of the boy in front of her, it is not a problem at all and she doesn't care at all. When Clarice was deeply moved, a proud smile suddenly appeared on Chen Tian's face, saying, how about this delicious chicken soup? I almost moved myself. After finishing speaking, Chen Tian patted the slightly bewildered girl on the shoulder and said, let's go to the cafeteria quickly, otherwise they will have chosen all the delicious food. Following Chen Tian, the black-haired girl cautiously said, West, what does hiccup mean? Hiccup is like curling up one's braids. The braid. What is it? Clarice was a bit confused. Chen Tian lazily said, it's pokai. Pogai, what is it? P.S. 9th update, brothers. Here are some tickets and flowers to support us. By the way, thank you for the 3 mice who came to Beijing to barbecue and their reward support. Chapter 10. Superpower Display. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On West, the teacher sensed that his X gene was highly active and showed signs of further improvement in his abilities. And his mental state is stable, so the teacher's evaluation of his potential has been changed to alpha level, which can be used as an X.Men reserve. Of course, whether or not he is willing to become an X.Men ultimately depends on his own wishes. In the conference room, Scott, wearing special glasses, said in a low voice, so for the practical class this afternoon, I'm planning to have him join in as well. Upon hearing this, Anna, a female student of the Rosary, hesitated and said, is this too early? After all, he has only been in school for over a week. The Iceman also nodded slightly and said, not bad, I feel a bit early too. Since he has passed the professor's evaluation, I don't think it's a big deal, said Stormwind Girl Aurora, holding her shoulders in opposition. All the X.Men present have experienced multiple battles, some of whom are still school teachers, so their opinions also need to be taken seriously by Scott. However, regarding the matter of early training Chen Tian, Professor X has already agreed, so Scott said in a low voice, "I understand everyone's concerns, afraid of promoting growth." However, the teacher said that he had recently felt some unease, but after careful investigation, he couldn't find the source, which may lead to another round of chaos. Therefore, it is necessary to accelerate the cultivation of vitality, and perhaps it can play a role in the future. When Scott said it was Professor X's intention, Anna and others paused slightly but did not object anymore. In the afternoon, when Chen Tian was taken to the underground training room, there were already 6 elderly students waiting inside. These senior students are a part of the mutant school with strong abilities, firm willpower, and good control over the application of abilities. Among them is the phantom cat Katie, and Chen Tian is the youngest in the grade. In front of everyone was a large arena, with 3 people standing on it. Laser Eye Scott, Stormwind Aurora, and Iceman Bobby. As Chen Tian stood up, Scott spoke in a low voice, "As mutants, we need to learn to control our own power. And as long as we are mutants, whether it's energy type, mental type, or physical variant type, our physique is stronger than ordinary people. At this point, we need to learn some combat skills, practice more, and accumulate combat experience, which is also one of the necessary conditions to join the X.Men. Today, I, Aurora, and Bobby will serve as companions to help everyone develop and familiarize themselves with their abilities, and be more flexible in their use. It's also an opportunity for you to get to know your peers. Among the people present, some will join the X.Men in the future, perhaps as combat partners. Alright, starting now, Peter, you come first." Peter is a sturdy and resolute young man with the ability to harden his entire body, known as a steel warrior. At this point, Ganglishi was already an X.Men, but not a teacher, but a senior mutant student. The arena is large, covering hundreds of square meters, and the entire underground training room is surprisingly wide. It is hard to imagine how such a large space was created underground. Ganglishi arrived at the arena, while Laser Eye and Storm Woman walked aside, leaving only Iceman Bobby in the middle. The Iceman, who was only in his 20s, looked at the Steel Man and said with a smile, "Peter, we're old friends too. Let's start straight." "Okay," said Ganglishi in a deep voice as he spoke. His body emitted a silver-black metallic luster, including his clothes, transforming into a steel figure entirely composed of special steel elements. Boom! The steel warrior who turned into a steel man stepped hard, and suddenly the hard ground cracked with cracks. Under the powerful anti-seismic force, the Steelers roared towards the Iceman more than 10 meters away, like a charging tank with astonishing momentum. At this moment, the Iceman Bobby reached out and pressed the ground, instantly unleashing a blue chill that froze the water molecules in the air. On the ground, the blue ice, like a water pipe, spread at a visible speed to the naked eye, transforming into a blue ice wall several tens of centimeters thick and emerging, with a cross arm between the 2 people. Faced with the sudden appearance of an ice wall, Ganglishi collided directly with it. Bang! Under the violent force, the ice wall instantly exploded. But at this moment, 3 ice walls continued to rise behind him, and at the same time, a wave of ice appeared under Bobby's feet, pulling him apart like he was skating. Bang, bang, bang. In front of the raging steel warriors, 3 ice walls were once again shattered. But at this moment, the ice man who had retreated more than 20 meters waved his hand, and ice hockey balls the size of human heads appeared in front of him. Whoosh whoosh. With a piercing roar, ice hockey balls burst out like shells, tearing apart the air and appearing in front of the steel warrior, landing with astonishing force. Boom boom boom. These ice hockey balls are extremely hard and carry an astonishing chill. Under high-speed impact, they explode with astonishing damage, and the roaring Steelers keep retreating. But it's just a retreat. After transforming into the form of a steel man, the steel warrior's defense and strength were astonishing. These ice hockey balls, resembling tank shells, landed on him, leaving only white marks. Chen Tian was surprised to see such a display of power. Compared to the simplicity and roughness in the movie, the ability control demonstrated by the Steelers and Iceman at this time creates a sense of impact from the collision of the two abilities. More heart-shaking. Especially Iceman Bobby, like a great ice mage, can easily pick up various ice attacks in his hands. Ice hockey, ice chains, ice walls, and so on, are completely different from the clumsy ones in movies that only know how to spray cold air to freeze people or create ice walls to block them. And the Steelers are also similar, with strong strength and agile speed, completely like a steel tank with astonishing defense. With just one movement of the foot, it shatters the ground, and with a wave of the arm, it unleashes a powerful force that shatters the ice wall. Rampage and Rampage, completely indifferent to the Iceman's attack. P.S. The 10th update is completed, brothers, continue tomorrow.